Good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you on this overcast Wednesday morning. Well, Margie, we had some storms roll through last night. I don't know if it woke you up about 3 o'clock, maybe?
No, it did not.
Well, it didn't wake me up, but my dog getting in bed with us woke me up.
That dog has a lot of privileges. That's what
Well, you know, he's 106 pounds of dog, and do you ever try to get him out of a place he wants to stay? You know, and he's got teeth. You know, it's not like working with a 6-year-old. You know, you can grab him by the arm and manhandle him a little bit. Not so with Rob.
Well, if you end up on the floor, Jim, it's your own dang fault. So that's all I got to say.
Well, at least he. Now, the last time that happened, he pushed my wife out of bed. She went and slept on the couch, and she was determined not to do that again. But this time, he left room for everybody because he prefers to
strategic locations.
Yeah, he will. I usually wake up sometime through the night, and his head will be laying on top of my head, you know. But his snoring actually woke me up through the night. So he was, after the storms passed through, which didn't take long, he wasn't going to leave the bed either. So anyway.
Well, they do say pets are part of the family, and I guess your dog has proved that in spades.
Well, whether you want him or not.
Whether you want him or not.
All right. We have a very special studio guest with us today, State Representative Candy Massaroni. Now, Candy was on sometime back with Senator Jimmy Higdon and talking about legislation and the work that they had done in the General Assembly that had just wrapped up. But Candy will be talking about her desire to serve another term in the Kentucky House of Representatives as our 50th District State Representative.
Yes, so before we get started on that,
right.
I have an announcement I would like to make, and then we will dive right into that.
Okay.
Once we get started talking politics, we won't remember the other. But I would like to invite everyone and inform everyone that Bardstown High School drama class is having their big event of the year, their big play. It's the Disney musical, Beauty and the Beast, and it's special because the costumes are very elaborate, and it's an expensive thing for them to put on. Mm-hmm. There will be 4 performances beginning tonight, May the 8th at 7 p.m. at the Bardstown High School auditorium, and admission is $5. It will also be Thursday, May the 9th at 7 p.m., Friday, May the 10th at 7 p.m., and then on Saturday at 2 o'clock, they'll have what they call the senior send-off, which will be the play, but then they will have some extra festivities afterwards to celebrate the seniors who will be leaving. So I encourage everyone who can to try to go to one of these performances. It is just wonderful to see these kids blossom at having their chance on stage, and to have people there to cheer for them and to clap and give them time to shine. So if you don't have anything else to do, don't sit down and watch TV. Go down to Bardstown High School and watch these kids act and sing their hearts out, and give them encouragement for doing something which is really going to impact them for the rest of their lives, because they get that approval and that sense of accomplishment for doing something like that, and experiencing the people's appreciation for the efforts they've put out.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for that, and we'll remind listeners again at the end of the show.
All right, thank you.
Of the show times.
Right.
Well,
now back to business.
Back to business. Well, Candy, welcome to Bradford and Brooks.
Thank you all for having me.
And you are seeking another term as our 50th District State Representative, and the district includes, I think, currently just Nelson.
Just Nelson County, yes.
So, in the past, it included slivers of surrounding counties, but it's just Nelson now. Well, tell our listeners a little bit who may not know who Candy Massaroni is, a little bit about yourself.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to serve the people of Nelson County this past 2 years. My name, again, Candy Massaroni. I'm originally from Eastern Kentucky, but I made Bardstown my home about 12, 13 years ago. My husband and I retired from the military, and we love it here, and this is our forever home. We built our forever house. We bought land here in Bardstown, and it's just been a privilege serving the people of Nelson County. Like I said, I'm retired. My husband and I both are retired military. We both have degrees in education. My husband's a technical school teacher in Elizabethtown Technical College. So, and we have a beautiful daughter who hates politics, so I'm not going to mention her name. She's a 13-year-old, so it's a little difficult for her. But, you know, I've learned a lot, and I've had a lot of mentors over the past 2 years. And I think one of the things that's really important is, you know, what we see the role as a legislator. I kind of see it a little bit different. I see a role as a legislator is to help my constituents and protect them from government overreach from the federal level and state level. It's not supposed to be about a competition of who can pass more bills and more laws, because honestly, I think we have a few too many anyway, and the more bills and laws we pass, it's just putting more burden on our people, and a lot of it's granted by monopolies, and whoever has the highest bidder is those laws are for. So, it's been interesting, and I'm excited to do it again and to represent the people of Nelson County.
Well, Candy, I will tell you, and this is just an anecdotal story. Of course, as editor of the Nelson County Gazette, people are, and when there's election coming, people always ask me, well, what do you think about the race? What do I think? And I'll turn it back on them. Well, what do you think? And I have heard numerous stories from people who have come to you, constituents, people in the community, leaders in the community, and who have all had nothing but high marks and praise for your willingness to try to get involved and do what you can, even if it's just introducing people to the right people that they need to connect with.
And that's the big part of a job of a state legislator is being a resource to people, sending them in the right directions when they have problems with medical care, when they have problems with different things. We're to be a resource, and I've built a great relationship with Senator Paul's staff and Thomas Massey's staff, so we have a really good relationship where if it's a federal issue, we can send it right over and they take care of them. All of the legislation that I have filed have been at constituent request. So there's not a piece of legislation that I have filed that hasn't came from a constituent. So that's something I'm pretty proud of, and it's constituents on both sides. I think the two of the bills I got through this year was actually from Democrat constituents. So we work for everyone. So
would you like to elaborate on that, on what those
absolutely.
bills were?
One of them was called the EN Alert, and I got that through with Senator Yates. And it's called the EN Alert, and what the EN Alert is, it's a bill for autistic children.
Okay.
And it's kind of an Amber Alert for autistic children. So I've learned a lot on that. I've done a lot of research. They're prone to wandering, and unfortunately they tend to wander towards water sources. So there's the amount, I can't remember the amount offhand, but I mean, it's just tragic how many young autistic children's got out and drowned in ponds or pools and stuff. So this is just a local Amber Alert for children. The next one was a service animal bill. It's to protect restaurant owners and business owners from people who try to put off their emotional support animals as service animals. So it's just to give them rights and to protect the actual people that need service animals.
Right. Well, it's part of the campaign, Candy. You've been your opponents said that you've not been effective as a legislator, and explain how. I mean, you have found ways to be effective.
I think I'm very effective because I've had to be very creative, and I've built a lot of good relationships with people on both sides of the aisle that's helped me get things done. Unfortunately, there's one or two people that I pushed back against the rules of the House. I wanted to allow the legislators time to read the bills, which is huge, and also thought the constituents should have at least 24 hours to read a bill. We should have it online for the constituents to read. That way they could address that. There were several rules I wanted to change, and that was kind of signing I went against the wrong people, and some of it was a local bureaucrat here. I'm not afraid to mention that, but I kind of beat out some of the good old boy system, I think, before, and I shouldn't have won before. So I got a little hostility from there, but that's fine. We've learned how to work with people, and we've done a lot of great things over the last 2 years. And I can honestly say Senator Higdon has been a tremendous mentor, and he's helped me learn so much. So I owe so much gratitude to him.
Well, I think Margie will agree with me that the value of bipartisanship and working with people outside your party to achieve common goals.
Right. One of our most celebrated politicians was Henry Clay, called the great compromiser, because he was able to get things done by getting two opposing sides to agree on, on things. So I think what's hard for people, especially people who have either been in office a really long time or who are there and still got all their ideals intact, is that they want what they want. And if they don't get everything they want, then they think that they've failed. In reality, everything in life takes compromise, and it's not a dirty word. It's how you get things done. And I think a lot of the young Turks, so to speak, don't quite realize that.
Right.
When I'm looking at legislation, there's three things I look at. Is it constitutional? Is it good for my constituents? And is it going to compromise my principles? So those are the three things that I always look at legislation. And everybody that votes for me knows that my faith is the most important thing to me. If it's something that's going to compromise my faith, I'm not going to vote against it, because I feel that one day I'm going to have to answer to my Creator. And so that's kind of, when I look at legislation, I look at those three things.
Candy, and this is just my perception, but school choice seems to be a really big issue. Of course, it's on the constitutional measure on the ballot, which would allow public tax dollars funding non-public schools. What do you hear from constituents about this? I mean, is it, being a political wag like I am, I follow these issues, and sometimes they're not necessarily on other people's radar. It's not necessarily a big issue to everybody. I mean, what do you hear? What are people telling you that's their real concerns in this race?
Well, I mean, the great thing about this, it's not up to me as a legislator if it's going to pass. It's up to the people of Nelson County in November. So whatever they decide, that's going to create the path forward if we're going to have school choice or not. I think a lot of people are for it. Nelson County, here in Nelson County, we have a lot of options. So, but there is areas that don't have any options for their children. And, I've got at this rap that I wanted to gut schools, which you remember, we was on the radio together. I never said that. I said if a school's failing, there needs to be, there has to be, if a school's failing, we're failing those children. If a child can't read, they're set up for failure the rest of their life. So like I've said earlier when I was talking to background, we have amazing teachers. And I think one of the biggest problems we have in education right now is that we are putting so much on our teachers. We're expecting them to be counselors. We're expecting them to be parents. We're expecting them to be disciplinary people. Our teachers can't teach because they have so much on them. And I've talked to teachers. Unfortunately, I've had teachers that's afraid to talk to me, so I'm having to meet them in different counties, which is bizarre to me that they can't openly say what's going on. But I think school choice will fix some of the issues we have if we have it. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to have to be crafted carefully, and the reality is probably 95% of students are still going to go to public schools. So I really have a hard time understanding how anyone can vote for
taking public dollars and giving it to a private institution.
Well, we do that often. I mean, there's so many different programs we do that with. And I think the biggest thing we need to look at, are we protecting institutions, or are we protecting children? Is it about the children, or is it about it? Well, you have what is it, the KEA, the KIA, public funds go to that, welfare, public money goes to welfare, that goes to private institutions.
Yes, but everyone who meets the qualifications gets those things. So it's not taking public money. I mean, every person who pays taxes is paying taxes into the public school system. And if you take that money and let it follow a student to a private school or religious school or whatever, that doesn't have to follow the rules that the public schools have to follow, you're taking their money and giving it to a select group of students, because those schools can all choose their students.
Well, I mean, and that's what we had to craft. We had to craft boundaries of what, who they accept, what they don't accept. Florida, for instance, they have tons of scholarships that go to children that have special needs, that go to different schools that some of the public schools don't provide. So the biggest, public schools are a necessity, but the fact is, in Kentucky overall, we're at the bottom of the nation in reading, writing, and all those core things.
And you think a private school is going to correct that?
Well, I think that our children, should be about the children. And if the children's not succeeding,
it should be about
if they can't read or write, they're set up for a failure for the rest of their life, and it sets up future generations. So I think we should concentrate on what's best for children.
I do too, which means funding public schools.
Which we did record. We did record funding this year on public schools.
Well, I will tell you that maybe I'm just naive, but I know that if this passes in November, the General Assembly next year will be in charge of writing the legislation, because we really can't predict what school choice will look like exactly. And I will tell you, Margie will tell you I'm a fan of divided government, and having, and even though I'm a Republican, having supermajorities in the state legislature kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies about turning over the state education and school choice to a group who's veto-proof almost, I just, of course now we don't know, they may bring in educators, and hopefully they'll bring in some experts in the field, because I don't know that. I know there's a bunch of legislators who have education backgrounds, and that's great.
What they did in 1990.
Right, but I'm just very wary of how that legislation will be crafted, and especially, and then again you get back to money influence and lobbyists, and I think there's going to be a lot of people fishing for their part of the pot. But again, that's just me, looking at it from afar, and because we really don't know what any of the specifics will look like.
And if we look at other states, I think it's going to be important. It's something we can't jump into.
Right.
So, and like I said, it's up to the voters. If the voters want it, we will be responsible for crafting legislation. And I think every state around us has a form of school choice. And I think their achievements have been great from that. So I think it's something that we can't, everybody has school choice, but we do have to craft it what's best for the students. And that's what I've been saying. It should be about the students, and it should be about the teachers. It shouldn't be about institutions.
Right. But I think, and I wrote in my opinion piece last night that I think almost universally school choice is either against it or very wary of it when you get to education officials, superintendents, school board members, and some educators, And there's just really, I think, the fear of damaging public education, but, and again, there's that big unknown, and we're all afraid of change.
Yes.
And it generates a lot of fear of what may happen. And I'm probably one of the world's worst for anticipating a little gloom and doom from time to time.
Well, I think we're missing a big factor here. I think parents will choose what's best for their children. If it's public education, if you have a school district that's doing awesome, the kids achieving, the parents are going to send their child to that school district. And if a child's not performing well in that school, they can send them somewhere else.
Well, they can do that right now.
So not in every. There's not a lot of. We're fortunate in Bardstown to have options, but there's a lot of places that don't have options.
A lot of rural counties, it's public education.
I guess I just have a difficult time seeing how the legislature has passed many, many, many rules about what public schools should do and how they should do it, and then they're more than willing to hand over taxpayer money for schools that they have no control over whatsoever, can teach whatever they want, pick whatever students they want.
But you're assuming that's what's going to happen.
No, but
That's
what does happen.
It's not always. There has to be some kind of regulation set forward, and that's what the General Assembly would do. So,
well, given their track record, I'm not optimistic about how that would go.
Well, I understand your concern, Margie, but again, I think the point is that it's going to be whatever the legislature creates.
Exactly.
And I have my misgivings about that too, but we can't. If this passes, now again, we're assuming
that it's up to the people of Kentucky to decide if this is what they want.
But the people of Kentucky need to consider all of the ramifications of what they're.
Agreed. All right. Well, we've kind of
beat that to death. So on to the next. All right.
Margie to.
Well, I
understand your concern about school choice because we don't want those negative, those impacts that we've seen happen in other states. And maybe, we can learn from their example and craft legislation that won't allow those things to happen. That's the hope anyway.
Yeah, a lot of it's human nature. But if you have a private school, they can only take so many students.
Right.
They will be limited. There will be students that they don't want to take. And if they have their choice, they're going to pick off. They're going to pick up the highest achieving students.
We kind of have that now.
Because they can have are good athletes. There's no secret why. The private schools in Louisville, their basketball and football teams and soccer teams are super.
Yeah, and we have places like Gatton Academy. They select the brightest people, and that's publicly funded. We fund
that's kind of a sore point with some, especially you get down closer to Bowling.
Yeah. So that has its issues too.
Yeah. Well, let's move on.
All right, let's move on.
From school.
So I think another issue that I want to really work on this next legislation session is giving back some authority to our local governments, especially on we need to craft legislation on ways to make up for the bourbon barrel tax. They're kind of restricted on how they can do that now. The property rights. The biggest issue I hear when I'm going door to door is people go out and they show me the black stuff all over their house. So, I did file legislation for that, but I think that the answer is going to be to give it back to the local government to give them ways to help with those issues. So
to raise money.
It's
without affecting the taxpayers.
Yeah, well, without having a state handout.
Yeah.
To create a new program to finance. I'll tell you, it's encouraging to me that in recent discussions that one of the local distilleries works with the nearby neighborhood.
And that's amazing. It's awesome.
And what a wonderful way to be a good neighbor.
And and they actually do that in a couple other surrounding counties. So,
well, somebody forgot to inform Martins about that. 'Cause I'm right behind them, and I am.
And it's because it's got really expensive. I don't know when the last time we got senior citizens. They're not able to get out there and do it themselves.
No, you got
and they're having
power wash it, and then the power wash takes off the paint, which now you have to paint again, which I do.
So that's a really big issue in our district.
That's a sore spot.
Right.
And another piece of legislation I filed that unfortunately didn't move last year is to help our senior citizens that's on fixed incomes, because with their the tax rates on them, I think they can't afford it. Their property values has gone up,
Property values
and
have
they're
gone
paying
up
more
for-
taxes,
or in
and the school
relation
taxes
to-
go up every year. So they're using a month or two of their actual
Yeah.
income to pay just taxes. So they're going without medicine, they're going without food. We have a lot of struggling senior citizens in our area.
Well, my wife and I have seen that. Our house wasn't reevaluated for 11 years, and the value didn't change. But when it did change, it was
changed.
a 40% hike.
Yeah.
Now, I'm all for paying taxes. Well, that sounds a little crazy, but I'm all for paying my fair share of taxes. And personally, I would have rather have seen the value go up every 3 to 4 years a little bit, rather than one 40% hike after 11 years. But I think my wife and I have looked at it. It's like, at some point, how many people will be taxed out of being able to afford a home?
And I'm hearing a lot of our seniors talking, they're having to move in with their children or move away just because they can't afford their taxes, and they can't afford the insurance on their properties anymore. So it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and now the average rent payment is less than the average payment on your house. So
Well, I will tell you that I've got my daughter's 31 and my son is 28, and the prospect of finding an apartment to live in Bardstown, it's going to take a really substantial income to afford that.
Oh yeah, average rent is over $1,000. Over
right.
$1,000 rent, mind you, not paying for a
I
place.
understand.
And another problem that we're seeing in Kentucky, it's some legislation that me and my coworkers already started working on. We're having a lot of squatters move in. We have a lot of snowbirds that go to Florida and stuff, and they're coming home, and they're having people just moved in their house and had no clue. So that's actually becoming a really big problem. So we're going to have to definitely work on legislation.
We have had actual people do that. In
Yeah,
Bardstown.
well, not here in Bardstown, but in surrounding counties.
Right.
So I don't think there's any empty houses in Bardstown at the moment. So,
Yeah, good luck.
But
Good
it
luck
is,
on
it's
that.
becoming a problem
Yeah.
across Kentucky, just people moving in and, and trying to get them out, even though these people own the house, it's their homes. They can't get them out. So we're going to have to work on that type of legislation, unfortunately, in the world we live in
Right.
next year.
Right. I think, was it House Bill 5, the public safety?
Yes.
All right. There's been a lot of discussion, and I know the city and county both passed legislation ordinances ahead of the approval of House Bill 5 that critics will say it criminalizes homelessness.
It does not, yeah.
But and it begs the question. At the city council meetings, there were some members, some clergy representing homeless people, and just were like, well, if they can't camp on public property and they can't stay on private property, most people don't want somebody sleeping on their porch, then where do they go? How do we handle that? And I think the Bardstown Police Department, kudos to them for bringing on a social worker. I can't remember
Olivia Rayleigh
to help
and her
with
dog
these,
Maverick.
to help with these issues. But I questioned the need for state legislation on that issue.
Well, but that was just one part of the bill. And
Right,
actually,
right.
I was a no on House Bill 5, and we had like 8 different amendments added on before I got to a yes, because there was things I didn't like in it,
Right.
and I didn't agree with. But I think House Bill 5 is addressing a lot more than that. It's addressing some of the fentanyl issues, which is huge. We have deaths in Bardstown every day, almost every week,
Right.
from from overdoses or people unaware that there's fentanyl in whatever they're taking. So there's fentanyl deaths. So that was a huge issue. There was a lot of different aspects. That was a small aspect I think the media took and they ran with it, but a lot of it came out of Jefferson County. You have people camping in front of property owners or store owners, shops, and and I absolutely have compassion. I think we have a lot of good programs and a lot of people that's willing to help, and it's just getting those programs to those, but it's not criminalizing homelessness. But there should be areas, I think each county is working on areas where if people are homeless, and they can actually camp at. So if instead of being out in the middle of nowhere, you have more safety in numbers, I think, anyway. So
right, and I think that if people are, especially you have a tourist town or a business district, people don't really. You want it to be attractive and friendly to tourists or even the home folks shop.
Yeah,
having the homeless camped out at the farmer's market or someplace in town, it's just not, people don't feel safe.
And that's true. And we do have a lot of great organizations in Nelson County that help, and I'm proud of those organizations. They've done a great job.
Well, they're working really hard, but the homeless increase all the time. Especially given the economics now. There are many people who are just one paycheck away from being homeless. They can be evicted if they can't pay their rent. We as a society have to come up with something so that people aren't sleeping in the streets.
Oh, absolutely
and
agree.
that they aren't curled up on the curbs.
But we got to look right now in Louisville. I think last week there was over 3,000 illegal immigrants dropped off in Louisville, and a lot of those shelters I have a heart, compassion, but most of these aren't families. They're young men that's illegally being flown into Louisville, Kentucky, and dropped off. So the situation's going to get worse, and unfortunately, a lot of the American citizens and a lot of the veterans are getting booted out of these places to make rooms for those, and that's definitely happening here in Kentucky. So we got to look at the overall picture because it is going to get worse.
Yeah,
it is going to get worse.
All right, well, Candy, we need to stop and take a break. We've had such a vigorous conversation. I'm not watching the clock.
Okay, sorry.
No, not your fault. I'm the guy behind the board. All right, we'll be back in just a few minutes with more of our interview with State Representative Candy Massaroni. Stay tuned. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks, Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you today, and our very special studio guest is, let me hit this button over here so you can see us on BRTV, State Rep Candy Massaroni. And Candy is seeking re-election, and she faces challenger Andy Stone, and the winner of the primary coming up on May 21st will be the next state representative, and will be sworn in January. Mm-hmm. All right, well, Candy, and those who read the Nelson County Gazette, I wrote Jim's political notebook, which is just my personal observations. It's all opinion, and sometimes not worth the paper it's not written on. But anyway, but it's still my views. I wrote about your opponent. And the Jefferson County Teachers Union money being funneled to another PAC that is, and he at the debates had denied that his campaign got a penny, and that's absolutely true because that money would never go to the candidate's campaign. It would be used for advertising and things to support, and outside the control of the candidate, and I think sometimes and they have no input on the advertising, so that's sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I think it can be a liability if it's not done well, but and I know that there are groups that are supporting buying ads on behalf of Andy Stone, and we just heard one. And also, I think you've got some some folks that want to support your campaign as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I just recently heard that there was a couple of groups that are going to be running ads on my behalf. I have no control over it. And well, it's actually really not even on my behalf. It's interesting when you go to the KREF and you dig that up. So I will take 100% endorsement of Jefferson County Teachers Union. If they're against me, I think I'm doing something right. So, but they actually didn't say they were against me. They were for Andy.
Right.
So, and if you look at the different groups, you can see they have to fill it out. Are they for or against? But I'm not necessarily a fan of anybody coming in and spending money on, I think it should be the candidates, and that's one of my biggest things. It should be all on the candidates, and I think it's ridiculous. There's over $1 million in PAC money, I think, in that one PAC to go against me and a couple other legislators. But it is what it is, so we have no control over that. But again,
right. And
we can't.
I think the story we both read highlighted that, of course, the Jefferson County Teachers Union is decidedly liberal, dominated by Democrats, and that's usually who they've supported, and that's fine. That's their right. And the reason the story even became a story is it's unusual that they would be funneling any money into Republican primaries. And one of those reasons, and you may weigh in on this if you want, is that with the school choice issue. And again, we're beating that dead horse again, but...
Well, and I think there's other issues I'm absolutely against, and I would love to show you some of the books that I put up. This is not book banning, but there is pornographic material in schools across Kentucky, and I have been a big advocate of it. And I will show you and Margie both pictures of the books. If my 13-year-old came home with that, I would lose my mind. So there's books is one issue. There is some of the curriculums. I think, again, this goes back to the teachers. A lot of these teachers don't want to teach a lot of the stuff that's being pushed down on them. So I think it comes back to the curriculums, some of the more woke agendas and being pushed by the federal government down. So,
well, I think the story implied that they would support, the teachers union PAC would support giving money, resources to candidates who would be less liberty-minded, less independent, and less for maybe in favor of school choice, and more along the lines of being traditional, supporting public education. And I think that's where they're putting their primary money, is to support that. Now, how that'll play out, I don't know. I saw, and I'm assuming this was a Facebook video, Instagram video, and I've got it recorded, but I haven't uploaded it anywhere. But it basically it's kind of ironic. It referred to your opponent as a fake Republican, and it's like, well, haven't known Andy Stone except through his work as a school board member. I don't really think that's a good description of him. There are Republicans of all different varieties who have different beliefs. Because
I have no control over what they run.
Oh, I know.
But I will say, when we're talking about, I am the more conservative Republican. I have the endorsement of the NRA. An A on it. Mr. Stone got a B on it, and he's got the lowest rating in the state. And I think the last couple of Democrats that even ran for this office got an A rating, so it's really hard to get a B rating. I've never voted to raise taxes. I know Mr. Stone has voted. School taxes go up every year. I know there's one year, I think last year, that he didn't want to go the full 4%.
Right.
But still, that's tax increases. So there's a lot of difference between me and Mr. Stone, and I'm not going to talk. My campaign is not about talking bad about anybody.
Sure.
I'm talking about what I can do. But there is differences between us, the more conservative. So.
All right. Well, we're down to about the last 6 or 8 minutes. I'll give you an opportunity. We'll to differentiate yourself and why. What makes you a good? And I know people will say your opponent has said that haven't been effective, and leadership doesn't trust you to carry legislation, et cetera, et cetera. How do you respond to that? And because I think people want they want an effective
absolutely.
legislator, and you've served 2 years.
And like I said, I have a lot done, and it's not. I mean, I have members of leadership that's donated to my campaign that completely support me. There, like I said, there's one or two people, and one of them's a local bureaucrat that definitely has made my life a little bit more difficult than they needed to, and I even feel bad about calling that out, but it's a spade's a spade. So I've definitely been affected. I've worked well with people. I've worked well across the aisle, Democrat and Republican, and in the Senate. I've got a lot of things. I've gave legislation to senators to run. It don't have my name on it, but if it passes, if it's good legislation, it's good legislation. And I want to go back to talking about, we have Rand Paul. I think he filed, 60? Let me look on this. He filed 60 bills. I think only one of them became law. So are we going to call Rand Paul an ineffective legislator? I think he's the most effective legislator we have in the federal part. But then you have another one who's a really kind of a more liberal legislator from Michigan. He filed 23 bills. He passed 19 of them. So I think it depends on what you look at as a legislator being effective. I don't think passing bills is necessarily what a legislator should be doing. It should be about protecting individual liberties and protecting from government overreach on the federal and the state side.
All right. Well, Candy, in my column I wrote to last night, I took your opponent somewhat to task about the outside money coming in. Of course, again, neither of you have control over any of that spending or what the ads look like or any of that. What groups are you aware of that will have expressed an interest in supporting you? Well,
the first one I even heard about was when at our last debate, Mr. Stone said something. So, and I don't know who those groups are, where they come from. I absolutely have no idea. Well, I know Make Liberty Win. They have endorsed me for several years. And, I don't think they're sending ads out or anything.
Right.
But
right. Well, I guess, the rule is they don't coordinate with campaigns.
We have no communication whatsoever, so.
All right.
But again, if the most liberal organization in Kentucky is against me, I'm good with that, so.
What if, now, at the lunch counter at Walgreens, people there's always talk politics, and we're always, with the election coming up soon, what if people have a question about, what's your stance on a certain issue? How do they contact you?
Well, my telephone number is in the paper every time I do an ad. It's everywhere. My telephone number is 502-510-1464. It's always been public. Constituents are always welcome to call. I turn my phone off at 9, so if you call after 9, you have to wait till the next day. But also my email, I have my legislative email, but if it's for a election, they can email me at candymassaroni@protonmail.com. And my website is candy50.com.
All right. Now you, and I can testify that she's responsive on text messages and phone calls, because I've never had a problem contacting you and getting information from you. All right. Any final, I want to go over the voting, early voting, et cetera, calendar before we leave. But
I just appreciate you all for having me, and I'll look forward to serving Nelson County as another 2 years. So.
Well, we appreciate your service and your willingness to come in and talk with us today.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. We are in the. You can apply for an absentee ballot, I believe, until. Their absentee ballot voting is underway. The in-person early voting begins Thursday, the 16th of May. And it's that Thursday, Friday, Saturday from 8 to 4 at the public library if you want to vote early.
Right.
And then it's a main branch here in Bardstown. And then election day, it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you can vote at your local precinct. And you should have gotten a postcard from the clerk's office that lists where your polling place is in your precinct. Or, of course, you can go to the Nelson County Public Library and at the voting center there. And anyway, but it's important to get out and vote. Make your voice heard. It's our duty, I think, as citizens, and especially when this election will affect our representation in Frankfort. So get out there and vote. And actually, I don't have a copy of what's going to be on the ballot, but that may change depending on where you live.
There's not a lot on the ballot. I think it's the presidential on both, and then, depending on where you live, you'll have Thomas Massey on one, and I think Brett Guthrie on another one.
Right.
So, my district. So,
Right, since we're split between 2 congressional districts.
but I hope we have a fabulous turnout. So,
Well, that remains to be seen. There are just over 16,000 registered Republicans in Nelson County, and slightly less than that in the Republican or Democratic Party. So, as I've told Margie, I never thought I'd see the day when there were more Republicans in Nelson County.
And the independents have increased.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Independents have increased as well. So, anyway, we will see how that how Election Day turns out, and Margie and I will be watching to see. Well, maybe not so much this election, but maybe in the fall, about the use of the straight party.
Oh,
voting.
yeah.
But anyway, that's to be seen. I want to thank everybody for listening today, and again, Candy, thank you very much.
thank you all for having me.
For coming
It's
in,
always an honor.
and thanks for tolerating my moderation of the debate the other Wednesday. I'm not a pro at it, but I did enjoy it, and it was great to.
How was it without an audience? That would be a little weird.
It was unusual.
It would be a little weird.
Yeah, that was unusual, but
My biggest thing, I don't get into this mudslinging. I think I'm not losing my testimony over politics. So
Right.
that's my. So
well, that's admirable in this world of dirty politics. All right, well, that's going to do it for this Bradford and Brooks. Thanks for listening. We will have the video of this show posted on YouTube by the end of the week, and it'll be promoted on Facebook and the Nelson County Gazette website.
And not to forget the Disney musical at Bardstown High School tonight, tomorrow night, Friday night, and Saturday at 2.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you, Margie, and thank you, Candy.
Thank
we'll
you
see
all.
you,
All right,
see you next week.
thank you all.
Thanks for listening.